session is being recorded now, and we are here for the closing plenary of BELTA TESL Toronto Reading Writing Web Conference. And we have Leo Selivan, whom I met a few years ago for the first time in Brighton at an IATEFL conference. It was my first IATEFL conference, and it was very nice to meet you there. And I also attended your session, and it was very inspiring. It was a great session. I still remember. Even the song is very vivid in my memory, Leo. Let me introduce Leo to you with a few words. Leo is a teacher, trainer, examiner, blogger, and international conference speaker for many years. He worked for the British Council and was a materials writer for the Teaching English website. Last year, he decided to strike out on his own and start working on a book, as well as devote more time to his PhD. He has written Modern English Teachers and Guardian Education, and recently guest edited the special edition of Humanizing Language Teaching, devoted to the 20th anniversary of the lexical approach. And we know Leo's very popular blog as well on mostly lexical teaching words and vocabulary. And now it's your turn, Leo.
Okay, thank you, Eva. Thank you for this lovely introduction. And I would also like to thank both BELTA and TESL Toronto for this opportunity to be the closing plenary speaker at this unique joint venture between two teacher associations from different continents. I think it's the first time that two teachers associations have joined forces in such a way. And I consider myself a friend of BELTA, because I remember our discussions with Nikki and James Taylor about the sort of initial discussions. It was at TESL France, I believe, in 2012. I think the same time I also met Tyson, the president of TESL Toronto. So I remember the initial discussions about founding a teachers association for Belgian teachers. And I think even before they incorporated, they already invited me to be one of their speakers at one of the BELTA days they organized. But unfortunately, I haven't had a chance, and this is my first opportunity to speak at an event co-organized by BELTA. So thank you also to everyone, to all the participants joining us from all over the world. I know it's Saturday, and for some of you it's afternoon, evening, so I'm sure you all have better things to do than to be here. And this is a card I came across on Facebook the other day, and I immediately thought about how dedicated we all are. Instead of spending time in a wine bar, we come here to watch a webinar with Leo Selivan. So thank you all. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm sharing my screen, so I apologize if some things might be popping up on my screen. I'll try to close them so that they don't interfere with the flow of my presentation, because I'm not using PowerPoint, I'm using Prezi. So I apologize in advance if it's a bit jumpy. So I'm going to talk about, today, I'm going to talk about, well, we'll start with a big question in ELT, probably one of the biggest questions, whether we should correct learners' errors or not to correct. And since it's a conference on writing and reading, I'm going to limit my discussion to error correction in writing. So first of all, to distinguish between errors and mistakes. Can you have a look at the two columns here that you want to see in front of you now? So the words, oh, sorry. Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened. It was meant to be, I was going to ask you whether the words on the left collocate with either mistake or error, but for some reason, the answer already came up on the screen. So that cancels my first interactive task. I would like to move to the next one. So these are different collocations with the word mistake and with the word error. But I would like to ask you now a question regarding our ELT context. What do we mean when we say a mistake, and what do we mean by error in our professional ELT context? Can you please write your comments in the chat box? Okay, so errors and mistakes. Is it the same thing? Is there any difference? Please post your comments in the chat box. Okay, Ella, lack of knowledge. Thank you. That's for errors. Errors should be corrected, ma'am. Okay, as opposed to mistakes, so you think mistakes should not be corrected, or? Okay, Julie, mistakes are slips. Errors show gaps in knowledge. Okay. Mistakes are less serious. Okay, good. Right, Tyson. I think that's yeah. If pointed out, students can correct their own mistakes, but they cannot correct uh, their errors. Okay. Well, I'll show you the answers. Thank you for your input in the chat box. I'll show you the answers here in just a second. Okay. So oh, this time it worked. So which of these relate to mistakes and which of these relate to errors? Can you just type in the chat box, one, whether it's a mistake or errors, and two, whether all these are characteristics of mistakes or errors? Just don't forget to write one or two in the chat box. Okay, yep, yeah, most of you are absolutely right. Okay, number one is a mistake. So it's basically, as Tyson said, learners can correct their own mistakes, but they cannot correct their errors because they simply don't know this structure or this grammar point in the target language. So mistakes can often occur as a result of overgeneralizing a rule or misapplying a rule, whereas errors occur as a result of the lack of knowledge. And an important point is when native speakers speak, they may make mistakes, but not errors. So mistakes are sort of performance slips. They're often like slips of the tongue, etc., and typos in writing. So now, in the last 15 or 20 years, there's been a fierce debate, even called controversy, among academics, among scholars, as to whether errors should be corrected or not. The debate was started by John Truscott, who published this very controversial paper in 1996, where he put forward a very strong case against grammar correction. He basically said that grammar correction is ineffective. Okay, it doesn't have any short or long-term effect on students' writing. It is harmful and should be abandoned altogether. And time spent on error correction should be spent on other concerns. His main opponent is Dana Ferris, another researcher who is primarily interested in writing in second language, in ELTA writing. So she basically, well, her counter argument is we can't really generalize. Yeah, there have been studies, some of them showed that error correction is effective, others are not so optimistic. So the research is not conclusive, and we need to find more evidence before we can tell teachers to stop correcting their learners' mistakes. So I would like to, again, to open it up to you, teachers, and I would like to ask you for reasons for error corrections. So I would like you, and now my moderator will open 2 polls, and I would like you to type in your answers in those 2 polls. So make sure you write it in the correct poll. One is for reasons against, and one is for reasons for error correction. So can you please type your ideas? Okay. All right. Well, we have lots of ideas for. I don't see any ideas against uh, in the meantime. Okay. Right. I have more ideas coming up. Okay. Okay. Now it seems now reasons against outweigh, or at least outnumber the reasons for. Now we have more reasons for coming up. Okay. All right. Yeah. Can be discouraging. May affect their fluency, giving more informed than content. Okay. And reasons for. They help students with accuracy, help raise awareness of areas that need work, etc. Okay, thank you very much for your input. I will ask my moderator, John, can you please minimize the polls now? Thank you very much. So just to summarize things that you've said, I'm going to present, well, these are not my reasons. These are basically reasons provided by John Truscott, reasons against error correction. So the main reason is, and you probably will all agree with it, we all relate to it, students repeat the same mistakes no matter how many times you correct them. I think you're all familiar with this phenomenon. Okay, now another reason he gives is students don't pay attention to corrections. So they're very often sort of interested in their grade. They tend to look down, okay, the teacher has written something, who cares? Let me just see what grade I got on my essay. And they don't really pay attention to your error corrections. Now, but the main reason, the main reason which he puts forward, which is something that may impede with the process of language acquisition, is that error correction may lead to avoidant behavior. So what happens simply, students may resort to forms they already know, sort of experimenting with new language. For example, present perfect is a problematic form for many learners. So instead of writing something like my country has changed a lot in the last 10 years, they would say something like the situation in my country was bad, now it's better. So it's just easy to avoid the present perfect by using past simple and present. And this is something that actually impedes the process, interferes with the process of second language acquisition. Now, reasons for are mainly the reasons put forward by Dana Ferris, by John Truscott's opponent. are such. First of all, it's something students expect. They want to be corrected, okay? And they may feel cheated if they don't see red ink or whatever other humanistic ink you use these days, green, for example. So it's something that they expect to see. It's something also that students' parents expect to see, or our principals expect to see. So, in fact, if we not correct errors, we may be seen as not really doing our job properly. Okay, and finally, these days it's recognized that it has, in the heyday of communicative approach, it was considered enough just to provide students with lots of input, with lots of activities focusing on the meaning. So these days, most methodologists agree that we need to focus on form as well as the meaning. And what is error correction? Well, error correction is basically reactive focus on form. So you see what mistakes students make, and you focus on those errors. So these are all reasons for. As you will see, the reasons for are mainly sort of pedagogical reasons. Okay. However, John Truscott replies, sort of rebuts Dana Ferris's arguments, and says basically that no study has shown the effectiveness of error correction. And if there were studies that did show the effectiveness, they were either short-term studies, okay? So, I mean, if the fact that students edited their essays successfully in short term does not mean that this progress would stand up over time, and then that in our future essays in other writing work, the writing work they do, they won't make the same mistakes again, because normally when studies kind of compare the original version and then a rewritten version after teacher's correction. On the other hand, with long-term studies, you can't really show that improvement in students' writing was due to error correction, because it could have been caused simply by students getting more input from reading, listening, speaking, or simply from learning language. I mean, after all, writing and error correction is not all that you do in class. You do many other things that may contribute to learners' progress. So it's very, very difficult to show, both in long-term and in short-term studies, that actually error correction is effective and it has any effect, it makes any difference. Now you might be wondering that the quotes I use are kind of from the 90s, so something must have happened since then. Well, in 2004, Dana Ferris published another paper where she summarized the body of research on error correction. And again, as you see, this is a quote. She said, "Existing research predicts but doesn't conclusively prove positive effects for written error correction." Well, that's not very reassuring, is it? So basically, she says that it's supposed to make a difference, but there's no evidence that it does. Another reason which Truscott mentions has to do also with teachers themselves, not only with learners. He also says that teachers' feedback is often incomplete, inconsistent, and even inaccurate. So once again, I would like to open the discussion now in the chat box. I would like to ask you, how do late correction, Rosalie? You mean you put all the errors on the board and you go over them with the whole class? What do you mean by late correction? Yeah. Okay. Nikki has recently started getting praise for welcome language. What made you start doing it, Nikki? Okay, Vicky uses code. Okay, Rosalie collects mistakes and puts it up on the board. Sharon, yes, all three. Yes, Jagrati, I also think the last point is very important. We can't just keep, pointing out students' mistakes. Also give them feedback on the language that they've used appropriately and correctly. Exactly, yeah. It may affect their affective filter. Okay, maybe overwhelming for the learner, Scott. Thank you. So sometimes you have to be selective. Sometimes you have to let certain mistakes go because you can't simply go on correcting every single mistake. Sometimes you just need to be selective when it comes to error correction. Okay, thank you all for your input. Okay, Vicky. Wow. So you really have to be sort of on the ball to give praise for the language which is well formed, but which was erroneous earlier. So you really have to remember what mistakes your students made, and then give them praise on when they've on their redrafts, on their rewritten language. Okay. Okay, I'd really like to move on, but the comments keep coming, and they're really interesting, and I would like to relate all of them. Sylvia, can you tell us a bit more about the pratfall effect? I mean, as much as you can, as far as the chat allows you. Can you, like in 2-3 lines, explain what it is? Tyson, yeah, if you would like to enable mics, I have no problem. Yeah. Okay, well, I think, Tyson, it won't be necessary. Sylvia has just provided us with the answer. Okay, it means when students are confident, their mistakes are seen as attractive, but if they're not confident, their mistakes are seen as embarrassing and negative. Okay, all right, thank you. Very, very interesting. Okay, well, I also think, and the main problem with this Truscott versus that Ferris debate is that they limited the discussion so much to grammar that vocabulary is completely sort of sidestepped, and errors are seen as something really, really bad. So instead, I would like to propose, instead of term error correction, okay, and by the way, going back to the beginning of this talk, I mean, error correction, as far as I remember, you all agreed with me that we should correct learners' mistakes because errors, it means learners don't really know that language point. Ironically, we use error correction, whereas it should be probably mistake correction. Well, anyhow, how about using this term, responding to learner errors? And instead of sort of seeing that errors are bad, 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 seeing them as learning opportunities, okay? Instead of error correction, as I said, using the term responding to students' writing. And another problem with all the studies that Truscott and Dana Ferris sort of summarized, they all focused on really trivial surface errors, sort of third-person singular s, or students using have instead of has, sort of discrete items, spelling and grammar, largely leaving out sort of large complex areas really to students to work out. So instead of looking at discrete items, I think we should be looking at the whole. We should be looking at the message our students are trying to communicate. What are they actually trying to say? And when you start doing it, you see that many mistakes are actually not really grammatical. I mean, there is a grammar mistake, but the problem lies much deeper. When you really try to understand what a student is trying to say, you see in many cases that they really lack lexis. So um, I would like now to, sorry, hold on. For example, if you look at these mistakes, and these are some of the mistakes that the researchers I mentioned earlier quoted. I suggest you to go with me. You might disagree with me, but I don't really see any grammatical problem here. Okay? I mean, surely it's a problem with lexis. Students simply do not know how to use the word suggest. They do not know. I mean, part of knowing a word is not only knowing its meaning, but knowing its collocations, its pronunciation, its register, and its grammar. Each word has its own grammar. It's sort of a grammatical pattern associated with the word. So the grammatical pattern associated with the word suggest is suggest plus verb followed by ing form and not by the infinitive. So surely it's not a grammatical mistake. If anything, this mistake actually shows that students have mastered the grammar very well, because if you look at these sentences, they all follow the same pattern. I want you to go with me. She asked me to help her. They told us to leave. And students simply overgeneralize it to the verb suggest. But I don't see it as a grammatical mistake. I think grammar is there. I mean, it's the correct syntactic pattern that they use. The problem is they simply don't know how to use the word suggest. And when we teach new words, we should also teach grammatical patterns. I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher trainer, and I work a lot with teach both pre-service and in-service teachers. So when I give them this mistake, of course, their immediate reaction is sort of, I guess, we're trained so much to sort of our attention is immediately drawn to grammatical mistakes. So immediately, first thing they do, no, there's a mission of is. So she is learning. But if you think about it, I mean, it's a lexical mistake. We wouldn't say she's learning in my school. We wouldn't even say she's studying in my school. I think the most natural way of expressing what the student is trying to express in English is she goes to my school, which is, again, a lexical mistake. So students may not be aware that of the collocation go to school, which is so obvious that it's often overlooked. But this is how what we say in English in this situation, she goes to school. So what I would like you to do now, I will display 6 more mistakes or errors. And I would like you to provide your own corrections. Don't forget to write the number in the chat box when you write your corrections. But again, be careful. I mean, you might be immediately drawn to grammar, but look beyond grammar and try to see what students are trying to say in each case. And by the way, these are all real mistakes made by students in junior high school, so the ages, say, 13 to 15. So can you please try to find the source of error in each case, whether it's grammatical or lexical, and write your suggestions in the chat box. Absolutely, Tyson, that is exactly how I corrected the first one. If nothing goes well. Like goes to school, goes well, are extremely difficult for learners because they're difficult because they're so easy. So learners tend to overlook them, and unless we teach them explicitly all those collocations with delexicalized verbs such as go and get and set, students simply will opt for more sophisticated words for success and get them wrong, instead of using something simple as goes well or goes to plan or etc. Okay, any takers for number 2? Yeah, in number 2 the question was, and students had to respond to this to the question, did it help you understand the poem better? And this is what one student wrote: don't, because that don't change anything to what I know. Okay, so they well, but then again, but you corrected grammar. You changed don't, it doesn't change. Do you think that the student might be missing certain lexes in this case? Okay, all right. Anybody else? I would like also to see your suggestions for all the mistakes. 3, 4, 5, and 6, please. If you would like to write, you don't have to write full sentences. I mean, if you feel that the mistake is caused by a lexical gap, by students not knowing certain vocabulary, I would like you just to write your suggestions. What lexes do you think students may be missing in all of these sentences? Rona, yes, I agree with you. Drive her to school. Again, I find students may not know the verb drive in this sense. They may know drive as when you drive yourself, you drive a car, but they may not be aware that in English you can also drive people to places. So, and that's also how I corrected it. Yeah, children laughed at her because her parents drove her to the school. Whereas, of course, it's very easy just to correct bring to brought, but again, this way students will never learn correct vocabulary, or appropriate vocabulary, rather. Yeah, forgot to study. Yeah, and number 3, I also agree with you. I would say study for. Again, they may know the verb study, but may not be aware that in English we also say study for a test or study for exam, which means to get ready to revise. Okay. Yeah, Marjorie, it's also common mistakes among your um, German speakers. Interesting. Yeah, bring with the car. Yeah, I find speakers of many different languages saying bring somebody somewhere instead of drive them or take them. Okay, Scott, for support. Yeah, probably. Well, let me show you my suggestions. I mean, I basically you've agreed with most of my corrections. Number one, don't succeed in anything, but I think yeah, I corrected this. It doesn't go well. If things don't go well, as Tyson has suggested. I mean, if you look at number 4, especially, I mean, this student has severe lack of vocabulary. I mean, it's very easy to just go on correcting grammar, but if you look at it, he or she is using the same words in that long garbled sentence all over again. I mean, there's a severe, what this learner needs is a huge injection of lexis and not more grammar correction. I mean, you might want to teach things like the purpose of our lives or the importance of our lives, things like the message of the poem, which again might seem easy, but it's not easy language for our learners. Or the same in number 5. You can teach things like fulfill our purpose in lives or fulfill our destiny, etc. So you see how once you start looking beyond the surface grammar mistakes, you can really see how these mistakes can be turned into real learning opportunities for learning new vocabulary. And I have some more examples. Ever the same in Turkish for bring, for driver. Thank you. Okay, some more examples, some more lexical deficiencies. If you look at these ones, what do you think? What lexis do these students lack? I mean, the easiest thing to do here is to correct people which to people who. Yeah, and again, it's a very common mistake. But don't you think students in here don't know how to use the noun phrase hotel employee? Okay. Yeah, or staff. Again, yeah, you can teach the word staff here. Okay, well, this is how I mean, these are my suggestions. This is what I feel learners may lack in each of these examples: hotel employees or hotel staff. And the second one, the film is set in. Okay, and in the last one, again, there may be many things that learner might be lacking and wants to express. That's why, I mean, they use wrong grammar, where it's in fact the problem might be lexical. And I'm not the only one who thinks this way. I mean, other advocates of a more lexical approach to English language teaching kind of concur that very often grammatical mistakes or supposed grammatical mistakes are actually caused by lexical gaps. And this is what Hugh Della, for example, says. Yes, of course, absolutely. Learners rely on basic, on a limited set of high frequency vocabulary, and this is something we're going to talk about in just a moment. I would like to turn now to, since the conference on writing and reading, so we're going to talk about now the relationship between reading and writing, because these two are they're closely related skills. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my notes here. Okay, so before I do that, for example, this is what I mean with working on lexis when learners have problems with grammar. For example, when learners make mistakes such as it depends, and I'm sure you've all seen this mistake many times, both in spoken and written production of your students. So instead of just drilling, okay, now you should use third person singular s, why not give learners very common prototypical expressions with it, such as it makes sense, it sounds right, or it depends, or the same kind of very common useful chunks that they can use in their writing with it doesn't. Okay, and simply instead of drilling grammar, drill these chunks, get them to memorize these chunks and use them whenever they want to use them. And if you follow the link at the bottom of the screen here, or the same link is, you see there's a little box under the chat box with different links. So there's a one link, the first link there, it doesn't matter or does it, and it's a link to an activity on my blog which does exactly that. So trying to deal with grammatical mistakes by simply focusing on most typical chunks, exemplifying this problematic bit of grammar. Okay, so as I said, I would like to move now to reading, which is very closely associated skill. Now, there's a very strong correlation between reading proficiency in L1, I'm talking about now first language, and your writing in L1. Okay, but this isn't always the case with writing, with L2 writing. Okay, I mean, first of all, there's no evidence that if you're a good writer in your L1, you will be a good L2 writer, because the sort of resources that you need for writing are very language specific. Whereas reading in L2 and writing in L2 are very closely connected. So we will look at how we can sort of take advantage of reading to help our students become better writers. Specifically, I would like to use these pre-writing activities, which you can do with your students to help them improve their writing, sort of their post-reading slash pre-writing activities. I mean, you never really sort of, you ask your students just to write something. Usually, in textbooks, writing tends to occur towards the end of the unit, after you've done reading, listening, and speaking, and all other activities. So some things you can do, which are related to reading, are brainstorming language, reviewing language related to the topic, and using writing frames. I'll explain what I mean by writing frames. So let's start with brainstorming language. So, I mean, it's very common, you probably do it with your students a lot on the board. You brainstorm ideas for your students' essays. What I suggest is also sort of brainstorming the language that they might need for their essays, and not only ideas. So, for example, your students are expected to write something on this topic. So you may start with, well, the key word, uniform. Why should you wear a uniform? Okay, and I'm sure the word discipline will come up. Do they know how to use the word discipline? So again, you may want to brainstorm here. Let's look at the most common verbs that go with the word discipline, such as maintain discipline, promote discipline, etc. And then what should discipline be followed by? Okay, so again, you can also brainstorm prepositions. So this is what I mean by brainstorming language. It's not only brainstorming ideas for an essay, but also brainstorming language. And when I say language, I mean not only individual words, but whole chunks of language that students might need for this topic. Okay, for example, gap between the rich and the poor. What adjective would come before the word gap? Do we say big gap, or do we say large gap? Something like this. So you may want to brainstorm all these, or ask your students to use monolingual dictionaries such as Cambridge Dictionary Online to find good examples with the words they know and want to use in their essays. All right. Now, another thing you can do is going back to the text that came up somewhere, you know, in that unit on the same topic, and ask them to underline useful chunks of language in that in the text. I will ask our moderator now to share the whiteboard with you, and we'll do some underlining of the useful lexical chunks together. John or Eva, can you please share the whiteboard instead of my screen? Okay, thank you. What I'm going to do now, I will, and do all the participants have uh, scribbling rights? Can they write on the board? Okay, so there is some text now on the board. Eva, there is text on my, okay, yeah. So can you please, yeah, you can all scribble, I see now. Can you please underline useful chunks of language in this short text on school uniforms? What useful chunks of language would you point out to your students that they might want to use themselves in writing? Can be handed down, second-hand uniform, thank you. Casual clothes, yeah, I find this word difficult, but my students, they don't know the word casual, and they would say something like sport elegant instead of the word casual. Yeah. Promote equity, thank you. Practical and comfortable. I don't know if someone has underlined it or it's just a doodle. You don't have to worry about. Yes, I also think it's a very important chunk. Yeah, thank you. Growing quickly, big saving. Okay, thank you very much for your input. Eva, can we go back to my screen share, or should I do it now? Yeah, thank you. Let me share my screen now. All right, so I underlined basically more or less the same chunks as you did, can be handed down, and second-hand uniform. I mean, also pay attention to two different uses of the word save. Save your good stuff. It's one sense of the word save, and big saving is a different sense of the word save. And if you translate it to your L1 or to any other language you speak, you will see you might end up with actually different words for save because it's two distinct senses of the word save. I also think you don't have to worry about is an important chunk to underline, and things like on a school day. So very often when you underline chunks of language, you underline sort of lexical stuff like casual clothes, big saving, but you also underline useful lexicogrammatical patterns, such as you don't have to worry about, and you draw your students' attention also to prepositions on a school day. All right, uh, or at the school, for example. Here is another text, and also you can. It's very important to promote sort of noticing and draw also students' attention to how texts are organized. If you read this very short text, even from this very short text, they can learn a lot about constructing a good paragraph. It starts with a topical sentence, and then there is sort of a balancing sentence of however. Well, because if we don't do it, what happens is, and this is something Scott mentioned earlier, students tend to fall back on the easy, high-frequency words that they know. Research shows, I mean, we all know there's always a gap, a wide gap, between students' receptive and productive vocabulary. So research shows that learners, and this particular study was actually, it concerned ESL learners. So I'm sure the percentage will be even lower for EFL learners. They use only 13% of vocabulary they can recognize, meaning which they know receptively, when they write. And their writing tends to sort of stagnate at 1,000, 2,000 word level. So they use the most frequent common words in English, and they don't use more sophisticated vocabulary. So what can be done to help learners to push their um, vocabulary production to a higher level. So what these researchers did, they they created what, after reading a text, and in this case the text was about Titanic. After reading the text, they highlighted useful language, both individual words and chunks of language that students can use in their writing. And then they were asked to write an essay. I think the question was they had to describe, to imagine they were on the ship and describe their experience. They were survivors and describe their experience. So what happened was, with all these words and chunks that they were taught, in the first composition, learners used only between 80 to 20% of the target items that they were taught, which shows that simply reading very lexically rich text and encountering new words is not, and in this case, actually, students drew the learner's attention to the words, but it's still not enough to turn this passive receptive vocabulary into active. However, after additional vocabulary practice, after lots of more vocabulary focused activities, and using a writing frame, which I will show in a second, their lexical production improved considerably, and they used almost 70% of the target items in their second composition and their second draft. And the writing frame that they used looked something like this. So instead of giving them just the question, okay, you were traveling on the Titanic, describe your experience, they broke it down in a series of bullet points, which sort of prompted them, or forced them even, to use the language that they had been taught. Okay, so a kind of more detailed prompt forces more also sophisticated lexical production. And what is interesting, they delayed 2 weeks later, they were asked to write the same composition again, and you see the results are very encouraging. They still used, I mean, obviously it went down, but they still used 50% of the target words. But what's interesting, their use of target chunks of language was at a higher level, which shows that we have a greater tendency to recall whole phrases, whole chunks, rather than single word items. Okay, and another thing you could do, and this is what I recently did with my exam preparation class. I teach also exam preparation classes. So these are some of the mistakes my students made. They had to write to be honest, I don't remember the topic. It was something about how the whole world comes together when there are natural disasters and they help other countries. So these are some of the mistakes my students made. So again, instead of correcting their mistakes, what I did, I asked them to find a text about it was last year, it was in November, it was just right after the hurricane in the Philippines. And if you follow the link below, it's also in the link is also shared with you in the little box under the chat box. It's called highlighting chunks in text in exam preparation classes. So that might be easy because you can't really click on the screen, but you can click on the link shared under the chat box. I'll click it myself now. Here, have it open. So you will see we use Digo, which is an annotation tool, and I have a blog post related to it on my blog. You're welcome to read it later. How we highlighted useful chunks of language. So instead of correcting errors, I simply drew their attention to chunks that they can use, such as devastated the city, they didn't know the word aid workers. They used something else. They used something helpful. The rest I don't remember. Okay, delivered aid. To even again seemingly simple things such as reach all parts of the city, come to terms with the loss. So again, we underlined all these chunks, and what I like about Digo, you can you share it with your students and you send it to your students, and they get the text with your not the original text, but the text with annotations, what you see now. Okay, and as I said, there's a blog post, or there's a post on my blog about how you can use Digo with your students. Okay, finally, reconstruction activities are a very good tool. So when students read text, they tend to sort of process them semantically. They look at the meaning of the text. They don't really look at how the message is built. But activities such as this, such as memorization of whole text, yes, it might sound very old-fashioned and behavioristic, but there are clear benefits to these activities. Translation and retranslation and dictogloss are all activities that promote noticing. For those of you who don't know dictogloss is an activity where it's a dictation, but instead of slowing down your pace, you sort of read the text at your normal speed, and your learners have to basically write down as much as they can, and then work collaboratively in groups to reconstruct the text. And then you show them the original, and they compare their version with the original. So all these activities, such as translation into the L1 and then translation back into English, or dictogloss, all activities where they have to compare their output with the target model, with the original, forces learners' attention on form. So they focus not only on the meaning, not only on the message, but on how the message is constructed. And they activate bottom-up processes. So we normally apply top-down processes when we read, but all these activities, reconstruction activities, they activate bottom-up processes, and they trigger noticing of important linguistic features, both vocabulary and grammar. Okay, well, I'm surprised at my own timing. We have 3 minutes left, so we'll have a couple of minutes for questions. So I hope to have shown you how you can turn grammatical mistakes into lexical opportunities, how you can, by establishing this much closer link between reading and writing, you can help your students improve their writing. Also, by using all these activities to promote noticing, by using writing frames, by highlighting chunks of language in text. And I hope whatever you do in class, the process of error correction doesn't look like this, like in this video that I would like to show you now.
Atticus Finch is a good lawyer because he's a good person who's a lawyer. Now, is this English? Are you fucking kidding me? Pathetic. This is why the jobs are overtaking us. And believe me, I don't mean you. But we're working really hard. You're not working hard enough. I need results. Class dismissed.
I'm sorry if there was a delay there, but class dismissed. Thank you very much for coming to my talk.
Leo, thank you very much for this lovely session. I've learned tons of things and I'm going to use them in my lessons next year. And thank you very much. And now I think Tyson.
Yeah,
And
I'll talk in just a sec. I'm trying to get my webcam to show up. Right.
so as far as I've seen, we have all learned lots of things and it was very impressive. Thanks a lot. I'll give you a big applause. Thank you. Okay.
You guys hear me?
Okay, and good evening from Istanbul. And now it's time for John and Tyson to close. Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Hello? Ah. No? Yes? No? Yes? I can Rose hear me and Vicky.
Tyson, we can hear you.
Okay. You can't see me though. No?
No.
I look so good right
Leo,
now.
that was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Leo. I would like to thank Leo very much for ending our wonderful conference and doing it an hour early as well at last minute. Thanks so much, Leo, and I'd like to give you a nice little round of applause. In any case, we are now at the end of our BELTA first webinar or web conference on reading and writing. I would like to thank so many people for being a part of this, not the least of whom is John Arnold for working this BELTA room like he has. I would also like to thank a couple of moderators, Eva, Jessica Webster, Sri Mali, Iraf, and Linda Chubak, who did some moderating yesterday. And of course, I think the biggest applause goes to all of the presenters who gave us a lot to think about, a lot to talk about, and hopefully the discussions will keep going on in social media and offline with our colleagues for many weeks to come. So thank you so much to all of those people. Furthermore, I think we can all agree that this has been an overwhelming success, this joint partnership between BELTA and TESL Toronto. Everything seems to have gone pretty much without hitch, aside from my webcam for some reason not working right now. But overall, I'm extremely pleased. We've had over 300 participants in all of the sessions over the 2 days. An amazing turnout, really. I didn't expect one way or the other, so I'm really pleased with that. Finally, the last thing I'd really like to mention is we have recordings going on the program. You might have noticed that already. Many of the slides are also going on the program, and they'll be shared on both TESL Toronto's website and BELTA's website shortly, I'm sure, as well. Really, the last thing you can do is, if you want to, maybe in the chat box, you could type in your Twitter handle or maybe the URL to your blog, and we can all start sharing with each other a little bit more. So otherwise, thank you so much. John or Nikki, do you have anything to say?
Yes, Tyson, I just want to say on behalf of BELTA, I want to thank you as well. You thanked everybody but yourself, but you've done an amazing job with the conference. Like you said, it's been an amazing conference. And within 5 minutes of us closing down today, Leo's session will be available online for anyone that missed it. If you thought it was a great session, tweet it and let people know that they can watch it. So hopefully we'll be back again next year with another great conference. And we hope to see everybody there. So thank you again. Thanks especially to Tyson and TESL Toronto and all the speakers, and Ava, who did most of the moderating in the BELTA room. She did an amazing job. Thank you, Ava. Heike for all her support as well throughout the whole conference, and my fellow board members at the BELTA for all their support as well. So thank you, and yeah, we hope to see everybody soon, whether it's on social media or in a webinar or in another web conference.
Cheers. Okay, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of the day because it's a beautiful day outside in Toronto and about 30 degrees, so I'm going out.
So Tyson, are you going to go to a wine bar now after a webinar?
Yeah, maybe. You never know. But I think I need to hit the swimming pool, to be honest.
Have fun, Tyson.
Okay, cheers.